What's going on, everybody? I'm Lauren Rosen, digital media reporter for the Philadelphia 76ers. Thank you so much for joining us for our Stars and Stripes sit-down presented by Toyota. Today, I am joined by two athletes who inspire me very much. Paralympic champion and U.S. Navy veteran Brad Snyder, and our very own second-year player, Matisse Thybulle. Just to get started, Brad, I know that you are in the process of training. You are going through maybe some transitions with your training. Can you give us a little bit of background on what you've been up to and what your life and your process looks like these days?
Sure. I don't know if you were trying to be punny there with transitions, but I've switched from swimming to triathlon in the last quad cycle. So transitions are a core part of what I'm working on. But aside from switching over from triathlon or from swimming to triathlon, obviously the pandemic threw training into a upheaval last year. But thankfully, due to the way that I train, because I'm blind, I created a sort of training situation for myself in my house. I have a treadmill that has a bungee cord on it that allows me to run on the treadmill, and I have a bike on a trainer that's normally used for inclement weather or something to that effect. But due to the inability to get out, my wife and I have just been training on that nonstop for the last year to try to keep as competitive as possible for this road to Tokyo, however that unfolds. So I think I live by the adage, where there's a will, there's a way. And, the pandemic threw us a lot of different challenges, but we've been able to adapt to them, and I'm looking forward to things opening back up again.
Brad, something I wanted to ask you about, this sit down is presented by Toyota, one of our partners, and I understand that they've been a big part of your journey. Just before we dive deeper, can you let us know what Toyota has been like for you through this process?
Toyota's been great. They kind of, when we partnered together a few years ago, they asked me, how can they support my training? How can they support my racing? And that was pretty easy. I race on a tandem bike. So the way a blind person races a triathlon in the Paralympics, I ride in the back seat and my guide rides in the front seat. It turns out tandems are super expensive, not very easy to get your hands on a racing tandem. So Toyota stepped in and helped me get the best tandem made in the world. It's a 7. I named it Kaizen off of Toyota's sort of organizational and mentality of getting better each and every day. And it's been a great pleasure to be able to race on Kaizen over the last few years. And I'm looking forward to dusting her off and racing her in a few months.
And you have a pretty decorated resume as an athlete. We haven't even talked about your military career. Matisse, I wanted to give you the chance. I know that we as an organization talk a lot about our appreciation for our men and women in service. I know you and your teammates discuss it. Do you have any sort of thoughts on what the military and people like Brad mean to you?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting just being an athlete and just being at the level I've managed to make it to. How many parallels you can find with the military and sports. And I mean that in the sense of how much we try to replicate what they do. And I think that says a lot. It speaks a lot to the team that they've created, their work ethic, and what they stand for. And obviously our situation as athletes is not life or death, and we don't represent as much as the people in our military. But when we go out there and play, we treat it as competition and to a certain degree a battle of sorts. And when trying to do it to the highest degree possible, we're constantly taking and learning from the military and all the countless things and tools and approaches that they're taking.
Matisse, I definitely appreciate you saying that. And I think that that's 100% true. And one of the things that I found most, something I've been able to take from my military background that's enabled me as an athlete is sort of, situating my training or my competition as a part of something bigger. My pursuit of gold isn't necessarily about going fast in the pool or racing on my bike fast. It's really about, representing my country. I wonder if, on your day-to-day basis, what kind of things do you bring to the court that enable you guys to play, for something bigger than yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I learned this. I kind of took on this mentality my rookie year. Because just for example, from Philly, which is like a working class city, and a lot of people, they are diehard fans, and they do a lot just to have the opportunity to watch us play. So for me coming into this, I mean, obviously I love basketball and it's what I love to do, and I'm blessed to be able to do it. But it's an 82 game season, and there's days where you just don't want to do it, whether it's training, a practice, getting shots on workout. And you've experienced this, every athlete has, but even on game days. But to know that we're going out there and we're stepping out in front of thousands of people who have made a sacrifice in their own right just to watch us perform, that's a huge motivating factor in and of itself. And I think it's something that a lot of us on the team take huge pride in, and that's why we try to win as many games as possible at home.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of teams struggle with that kind of that day in, day out kind of struggle. But I definitely think you can observe teams that do it well are playing for each other. They're playing for the crowd. They're playing for something bigger. So I think that's really great. And I think you guys do a great job of that.
Thank you. Thank you. I know we take pride in it. Last year.
Yeah, for sure.
That's better. But like last year, our home record was one of the, Lauren, do you know the numbers?
It was the best in the league.
Yeah. To put it lightly.
We don't need the numbers. It's the best.
Yeah. So it was huge. And this went from like coaches to players. And I mean, it goes from that to even on a personal level, guys play for family members. Or I know I lost a parent when I was in high school, and playing for that, knowing that they're still watching. And the reasons I think vary a lot, but just knowing as an athlete that you represent something more than whatever it is, your sport or your competition is huge for you.
Yeah. Another thing that we talk a lot about in the military is, a lot of people have different reasons for joining to serve. No matter, everyone comes from different backgrounds. And we all kind of have our own attachment to narratives. Maybe we watched Top Gun when we were younger or something to that effect. But to a person, once you actually deploy, once you're actually, in combat or whatever else, a lot of those narratives go away. It's really hard to stick to a really lengthy or sort of lofty version of patriotism when you're actually in combat. What you end up fighting for are the people to your left and to your right. To what extent do you guys play for each other? And do you feel like that's a powerful motivator and empowering kind of thing for you guys on the court?
And just hearing you say that reminds me just how powerful it is. But yeah, that's what separates the good teams from the great teams is when, and even coaches say this, they say when you play for each other and when you can hold each other accountable is when you'll be great. Because if you need something from the outside, whether it's a coach or a film session or something else that allows you to play at your best of your abilities, you're still limited. Because what really comes down to is when you're in battle per se, like in sports, but realistically in the military, all you have is who's next to you, and you're going off of what you see and what you feel. And when you can count on each other and trust each other on that level is when you're able to do something really special.
That's really incredible. That's awesome to hear you say that.
Yeah.
You guys are doing exactly what I asked you to do. I clearly don't even need to be here. Brad, you have a future in media for sure if you want one.
Thanks.
Something I did want to ask you guys about, Matisse, Brad is a Paralympic champion. Brad, Matisse is getting ready, hopefully, to, considering the landscape in the world, but hopefully play in his first Olympics this year. So I'm curious if you have any advice for him going into his first sort of international competition like that.
Well, Matisse is already a pro at it. It's exactly what we were just talking about. I really think that on sort of, I have two pieces of advice. One is that, understanding that you're playing for something so much bigger than yourself. There's nothing like playing for Team USA. And there's nothing like standing up on that podium and listening to your anthem and knowing that, the stars and stripes are being raised higher than all those other flags in that arena. To me, there's no bigger platform in sports than the Olympic Games and playing for Team USA. You guys play on the dream team, the literal dream team. There is nothing better. The second, though, and I feel bad even kind of stepping into this domain, giving this advice to Matisse, because again, you're already a pro at it. But my advice, generally speaking, to new athletes to going to the Olympics or the Paralympics is, the preparation is so important because it's a stage like no other, and it's a crowd like no other, and the stakes are higher than any other stakes. So you have to be able to step onto the court or onto the pool deck or onto the race course, knowing that you've done the preparation needed to be at your best on the very highest stage. And again, I think Matisse and the 76ers know that and practice that every day. But it's something that's worth kind of saying out loud because it's good advice for basically anybody, just making sure that you're doing what it takes to establish good habits and make sure that you're prepared to be your best each and every day when you step out onto the field of competition or his battle. As Matisse says, we've all got our own battles, and preparation is a critical component of that. Matisse, are you excited?
Yeah, I've been in the NBA for, it's been like a year and a half now. And to just look at the opportunities that have been in front of me and the different levels I've been able to compete at and what I've been able to compete for. Last year, making it to the playoffs. This year, with championship aspirations. I think a lot of what you said rings true just in your average, not even average, just in your competitions that you experience along the way. Like to win a lot of games in a regular season, each individual has to come into a season knowing that they did the work to be the best version of themselves. And then once you get to playoffs, each team needs to go into it knowing that we've done the best preparation as a team to be the best group that's going to get on their court. And then it takes another step once you get to the championship, just to who has the mental fortitude to just fight through all the fatigue, the injuries, the pressure, and still compete at these highest of levels.
I know one of the unique challenges of Olympic basketball is you guys come from a bunch of different teams with different team dynamics, and then you go to the Olympics for the first time playing, not having as much opportunity to gel. What do you think that will be the best strategies for you guys to embrace as you're getting ready to go to the games?
That's interesting. I think, especially considering this season, when the NBA season ends, depending on how far you make it along the line, let's say you make it to the finals, there's only a couple days between the end of the finals and the beginning of the Olympic Games. And I think at that point, and to what you said earlier, just to play on that stage, you have to be fully bought in if it's a team event. And I think with such little time to prepare, with the guys coming from the NBA and the guys just coming from representing their countries, the amount of time that you have to acclimate to each other is so little. So just to buy in from the jump is going to be a huge aspect of it.
I look forward to it. I wish you guys the best of luck. I can't wait. Team USA's #1 fan.
Well, Brad, I have bad news for you, and this is my bad. I should have explained it better. Matisse is actually a dual citizen of the United States and Australia, so he'll be representing Australia this summer, which I think we can sort of still root for, right? If you're local.
Oh, for sure. Australia has hands down the coolest chant, the ziggy 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 oi 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 kind of thing every time. Every time that happens in the stands, it's so cool. Sorry, Matisse, I didn't realize that, but that's super exciting. I can't wait for you. That's awesome.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, it's really exciting. And I think as anyone who's watched the Olympics growing up, just to be a part of that, you're surrounded, even though you're one of the top athletes yourself, you get to look around and see other, of the best athletes in the world. So I can't wait to just be surrounded by such high level people.
Right. And there's so much camaraderie about that. I mean, I really feel like that's one of the sort of the points of the Olympic and Paralympic Games is to establish a sense of camaraderie around this common set of goals or common set of values. And the values are, the things that it takes to be, elite at athletics. And it's things that we all know, like dedication. It takes courage to take the risks, to do what you need to do to train. And there's a certain sense of camaraderie, no matter if it's a fencer, a basketball player, a swimmer. You meet them in the cafeteria at the Olympics or Paralympics, and you kind of just know that's a person who's on the grind kind of thing, It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Matisse, I know you already know some of your teammates, some of the Australian guys in the NBA. What's it been like playing against those guys? I'm curious, getting to know them sort of throughout the season with limited interaction. I see Brad nodding, so that makes me happy that we're both interested. What's it been like to get to know your future teammates now?
It's funny. It's actually more of we're obviously competing, but it's more of a bonding time than anything, because these are guys who we know of each other, and some guys are still learning or discovering that I even exist, and to actually get on the court. It's one, we get to bond over this common knowledge that we get to compete together, and also two, it's kind of you get a feel for each other in a sense, because they get to watch me play. I'm the new guy coming into the scene of a team that's been playing together for a long time, and now they get to kind of size me up and be like, well, how can he come in and help us? And so just trying to do my best and getting the feedback after games where the guys reach out and like, hey man, can't wait to get out there and compete. It's cool just knowing that even at the NBA level, one of the highest levels in the world, that you can still be working with individuals to compete for something even bigger.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Brad, I know that we talked about it a little bit. We've touched a bit already on team building, what that means in the NBA, what that means in the military. I'm curious personally, when you went through the transition of ending your military career, beginning your career as an elite athlete, what did you bring from career A into career B?
It's such an interesting question because it's not as straightforward as you might think. And that's one of the reasons that I like working with Hiring Our Heroes so much, is that it's not well understood or well appreciated by most people how difficult it is to transition from military service to a normal corporate job or a different form of employment beyond the military. For me, I spent 7 years gaining this really niche expertise in dismantling explosive bombs. And thankfully, there's not a whole lot of need for that in the corporate space or really in anywhere in the United States. So moreover, as I was spending all this time going to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, doing that job, my peer group was gaining relevant work experience and doing marketing and doing sales and learning all these terms like P&L sheets, profit and loss statements, and stuff like that. And I remember jumping into the corporate environment for the first time and really feeling very lost. And it takes away a lot of your confidence. I was very confident in my job as a special operator. I could jump out of aircraft, I could scuba dive, I could do all these really, really cool things. But I felt very uncomfortable even just in a corporate boardroom because I didn't speak the language. I didn't know the lingo or anything along those lines. And it was very, it eroded at my confidence. So it took me a while to kind of learn that the things that I bring to the table are, leadership and team building and some of the stuff that Matisse and I were talking about at the beginning of this, forming teams around common goals. These are some sort of intangibles that, that you learn in the stresses of combat that I bring to the table. And I had to go through a bit of a self-discovery process. And that's what Hiring Our Heroes does, is help veterans make that transition and understand the values that they learned in the military that are useful in the corporate environment and how to communicate that, whether it's through a resume or interviewing, and then kind of pairing them with employers who are looking for those intangible skill sets that the military brings to bear. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to talk about it.
No doubt. I have so much admiration, obviously, for folks in the service. And it's interesting when you talk about transitioning in any part of life. We talked about your transitions in triathlon, but transitioning from one career to another, I think everybody can really relate to that. So I appreciate you sharing. Something I want to hear from both of you. Do you have a proudest moment in any of your careers? Brad, I'm not sure how much you know about Matisse's background, but he's not just a basketball player. He's a really talented content creator. And while the team was in the bubble, Matisse did a great job of showing that experience to the world. And if he were a veteran in this league, and if he had already played 10 or 15 years, maybe he'd be transitioning into a space like that. It's a little soon for him to abandon all his talent. But I want to open up for both of you to talk about an achievement that you're really proud of, whether it's in your primary, secondary, current, former career. Do either of you have something that sticks out of a proudest moment?
Matisse, you want to go?
You can go first.
I'll go first. Something that I'm proudest of. I think, first, I got married right before the pandemic. So that was, we're really excited about that. It's probably the biggest life change that's near and dear to me at this particular point. And gosh, we're lucky that we got married right before the pandemic, because a lot of people had to cancel their wedding plans and all that. Athletically, what I'm most proud of is that there's been a continual evolution in my athletic career. It wasn't always intentional, but looking back on it, I went from the London Games to the Rio Games, and both games had a completely different feel to it. And what I have embraced is this idea that I always want to be a little bit different than I was the day before. I always want to make sure that I'm taking on new challenges. So I don't want to ever really get too content with one particular achievement. I want to continue to make sure that every day is raw, every day is challenging, every day I'm sort of kind of pushing to that barrier. So and that kind of resonates with that whole Kaizen organizational philosophy at Toyota. So I don't want to, I'm kind of dodging the answer, but I'll hand it over to Matisse.
I mean, it's interesting that you kind of take that point of view, because as an athlete, when you get to such high levels, part of the thing that drives you, or that continues to drive you, is just seeing yourself improve. And I know I experienced this greatly. And for me, it's hard to choose one moment, because each moment led to another one. So whether I was in college and just making the starting lineup, and then becoming a defensive player of the year, being scared that I wouldn't be able to break that ceiling and make it and be even better, and then becoming like the national defensive player of the year, and then being like, well, how can I get better from here? And then I get drafted. So it's, to what you're saying, it's really hard to choose as an athlete one single moment or experience that kind of like would embody everything, because if you stick to one point, you're not really getting better. And
that's right.
It's a weird way to, it's kind of a weird way to think about it, but when you experience it, you can really feel and realize that the progress and the constantly looking forward is what is truly the proudest part, and like the most fulfilling part of being an athlete.
That's it. One of the greatest challenges in all of athletics, I think, is how do you stay thirsty after success? You know, if you win a conference championship, how do you go right back into the weight room or go back to practice the next day? So what makes people like Tom Brady or LeBron James or Kobe like so strange, so anomalous, because despite every level of success they ever had, they went right back to the grind. And you're kind of like, why? The rest of the world looks at that like, why would you do that? Like, go celebrate, have some champagne, smoke a cigar, all that stuff. None of those guys do that. They go right back to the grind. And I think that is so cool.
This is my last one for both of you. Obviously, you've both had really impressive careers, both still very young, and a lot to come. For folks that look up to you, I know you both have a lot of fans from a lot of different walks of life. Do you have any pieces of advice for maybe young people that are watching this or that admire you as they continue on their own grinds and deal with their own transitions in life?
I'll go first, because Brad went first for me the last time. For me, just speaking from my own experience, it would be to not get caught up in the big goals or like the big fancy headlines, and just continue to get excited about the small achievements that you have within yourself, the little bit of progress that you're able to see in yourself, and the abilities that you're able to grow, the skills you're able to develop. Because if you had asked me when I was 5, 13, or 19, I probably wouldn't have told you I was going to end up being an NBA player. I knew I wanted to. I knew that was something that would be pretty cool. But I never thought I was good enough. So I just kept working on these little skills here and there. I got really good at one thing, and then started to make that even better and better. And now I've ended up in the NBA, one of the better defenders in the league. And it's something I'm really proud of, but still something I'm trying to continue to grow into something better.
Matisse, I think that's great advice, and I'll pull on the same thread. It's kind of it's great advice not only in athletics, but really in life. Looking back on where I was coming out of college, if I could whisper a bit of advice in my own ear, it would be just enjoy this moment. Because I spent a lot of my time when I was younger, really, I couldn't wait to the next thing. I couldn't wait to get through school so I could go on to training for my job in the military. I couldn't wait then to go from training to deployment. Then I couldn't wait from going from a deployment to my next deployment. And I think looking back on that, there were a lot of days that I probably didn't enjoy to the fullest because I was always looking to what's next. So to your point, really kind of learning how to live in the moment and make the most of this moment is critically important. And then as it pertains to athletics, you know, every workout is really pivotal in the whole kind of you know, in the long term of what you're trying to accomplish. You don't become great overnight. You don't habituate those skills like you were talking about, Matisse, overnight. You do it like rep after rep, shot after shot, practice after practice. And I think if you can learn to be really present in each of those moments, that's how you really untap your unlimited potential.
I love that.
I love both those pieces of advice. I'm going to take them with me into my own career. Brad, Matisse, I knew I was going to learn a lot. I did. I was not disappointed. Thank you so much to both of you for doing this. Thank you to everybody who joined in for our Stars and Stripes sit down presented by Toyota. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody that's watching, and good luck this summer to both of you.
Yeah, good luck, Matisse. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk.
Thank you. It was great meeting you, Brad. Good luck to you too.
Great meeting you as well.